Before we get into tonight's tale, let me just say, if you enjoy these little bedtime misadventures, do subscribe to Nap Giggles and share a laugh with me in the comments. I'd love to hear your funniest technology slip-up. Believe me, I've had plenty. Now then, tonight's story is about the day I bravely stepped into the world of modern payments. Just me, my phone, and a simple plan to tap, beep, and be done with it. Easy, right? Except, instead of paying for my shopping, I managed to phone my nephew in the middle of the checkout line with a queue behind me and a cashier who looked as though I'd just attempted intergalactic communication. Yes, this is the story of the day I tried to pay with my phone and called my nephew instead. I woke up to a day that seemed like it had no plans for trouble. The kind of day that looked calm even before I'd finished yawning. The sky outside was pale and clear, as if it had been freshly washed overnight and hung out to dry. The air felt crisp but friendly. Not too hot, not too cold, just the sort of temperature that makes you believe in balance. And in that quiet moment, sipping my first cup of coffee, I thought to myself, yes, this will be a sensible day. A day with no complications. Of course, whenever I think that, life takes it as a personal challenge. It's as if the universe hears my confidence and mutters, "Oh, really? Let's see about that." My mission was simple. Pick up a few things from the store. Nothing exotic, nothing outrageous, just the basics. Milk, bread, and maybe some coffee, strong enough to keep me awake through the evening news. A normal errand. But that's the danger with normal errands. That's where the chaos hides. It waits quietly in the grocery aisle, lurking like a mischievous cat behind a row of canned beans. Still, I wasn't worried. If anything, I was slightly excited, because this time, I wasn't just going to shuffle through my wallet, pulling out faded bills that looked like they'd been through a washing machine accident. I wasn't going to dig around in my pocket for coins that always turn out to be buttons from shirts I no longer own. Number. This time, I was going to pay like a modern person, with my phone. Now, paying with a phone should be simple. I'd seen people do it before. They just tapped the little glowing screen against the machine. The machine made a cheerful beep. They smiled, nodded, and walked away with their groceries. Elegant, effortless, like a magic trick performed in aisle 7. And I thought, why not me? Why not step boldly into the 21st century? After all, I had the phone. It had the app. It had the little glowing icon that promised to make my life easier. All I had to do was try. I even practiced once at home. I held my phone over the toaster and made a beeping noise with my mouth just to get into the rhythm of it. It felt ridiculous, but it gave me confidence. And confidence is half the battle, right? But here's something I've learned. Whenever I try to be impressive, things don't quite go according to plan. When I try to whistle, I sound like a tea kettle with asthma. When I try to jog, my knees sound like a percussion section tuning up. And when I try to master technology, well, let's just say technology usually wins. Still, I was optimistic. As I walked to the store, I rehearsed in my head. Step 1, unlock phone. Step 2, hold it up to the machine. Step 3, beam of light, magic beep, transaction complete. Step 4, leave store with dignity fully intact. It sounded foolproof, and I don't know if you've noticed, but whenever someone calls something foolproof, it usually means a fool is about to prove it wrong. The walk itself was pleasant. I passed Mrs. Henderson's front yard, where she was once again locked in combat with a garden hose that seemed to have sworn vengeance against her ankles. I waved. She waved back, dripping. I passed the corner cafe where a group of teenagers sat with their iced coffees, talking so quickly I wondered if they were part of an underground auction. Everything felt normal. Nothing hinted at the technological disaster waiting in my near future. I even had time to think about how shopping itself had changed over the years. When I was younger, paying meant handing over a crisp bill and waiting for the cashier to count back the change. Sometimes they'd hand it to you in such a neat little stack, coins on top, bills on the bottom, that you almost didn't want to disturb it. Then came checks. I used to carry a checkbook so thick it could have doubled as a doorstop. I'd write out the check in my neatest handwriting, even though the cashier clearly couldn't care less. And now, apparently, checks are antiques. You could frame one and hang it in a museum next to the rotary phones. But phones? Phones are supposed to be the future. And I wanted to be part of that future, even if just for a moment. I entered the store with confidence. The doors slid open with that familiar sigh, as if the store itself was bracing for whatever nonsense I was about to cause. Inside, it was calm. A few shoppers pushing carts, a toddler in aisle 3 loudly explaining the injustice of being denied candy. Ordinary, comforting. I picked up my basket. I moved through the aisles. Milk, bread, coffee, a small victory dance in my head. So far, so good. The universe hadn't caught on yet. As I wandered, I allowed myself a few unnecessary detours. I lingered in the cereal aisle, staring at cartoon mascots that had somehow survived since my childhood. I spent a solid 2 minutes debating whether I needed a new sponge, even though I had 3 at home. I considered buying a pineapple just because it seemed ambitious. In the end, I stuck to my list. This was not the day for pineapple-based adventures. Still, I added one small luxury, a chocolate bar. Because no matter how modern you try to be, there's always room for chocolate. Finally, with my basket humming with groceries, I approached the checkout. And that's when I saw it. The future in action. A young guy, maybe 20, walked up ahead of me. He tapped his phone on the payment terminal. Beep. Done. Smooth as jazz. He didn't even break stride. It was like watching a hawk glide across the sky or a dolphin leap through the waves. Effortless grace. I nodded approvingly, as if I too was a member of this secret society of phone-paying magicians. Inside, I thought, that will be me. Any second now, that will be me. While waiting in line, I even started imagining the possibilities. Maybe the cashier would be so impressed they'd give me a knowing nod. Maybe the person behind me would lean over and whisper, "Nice tap." Maybe I'd walk out feeling lighter, taller, practically glowing with technological mastery. It was all possible, all within reach. And then it was my turn. The cashier gave me a polite smile. I returned it with the quiet intensity of someone about to attempt greatness. Groceries scanned, total displayed. I held my phone like Excalibur about to be drawn from the stone. This was my time. Or so I thought. The cashier's smile was polite, professional. It carried the quiet patience of someone who has seen everything. Shoppers with carts so full, they looked like they were preparing for winter hibernation. Shoppers who forgot their wallets at home and tried to pay with coupons from 3 years ago. Shoppers who insisted on arguing about whether a banana counted as one item or two. Compared to that, I was about to be refreshingly simple. Or so I believed. I straightened my shoulders. This was my moment. My debut performance as a person who pays with their phone. I unlocked the screen with a flourish, the way a magician reveals the hidden card. The app was glowing. The icon shimmered. I was ready. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried to look competent while also desperately checking tiny icons on a phone screen, but it's harder than it sounds. I squinted. There were too many options. Wallet app, bank app, shopping app, something called digital keyring that I don't even remember downloading. I tapped one at random, pretending I knew what I was doing. The cashier scanned the last item and announced the total. A reasonable number. A number well within the financial powers of my mighty phone. I nodded gravely, as though confirming I was prepared to make such a significant exchange of digital wealth. Then came the machine, the payment terminal. It stood there on the counter like a futuristic oracle. A small screen, glowing buttons, and that mysterious square where the magic was supposed to happen. I had watched it accept other people's phones without hesitation. Would it accept mine? I positioned the phone over it carefully, not too high, not too low. I imagined it was like pouring tea, gentle, precise, a delicate ritual that required grace. Nothing happened. I adjusted the angle. Still nothing. I rotated the phone in slow circles, hoping to stumble upon the secret position. The machine blinked at me, unimpressed. Behind me, the line shuffled slightly. Not impatient, not yet, but aware. That subtle shift of people who realize their quick errand might be slowed down by someone performing interpretive dance with a smartphone. I tried again. A firm tap this time. Surely a firm tap would convince the machine. The phone made a noise. But it wasn't the right noise. It wasn't the cheerful digital beep of success. It was the old-fashioned ringtone. For some reason, my phone had decided that what I really wanted at this exact moment was to make a call. And apparently, it had chosen my nephew. The cashier raised an eyebrow. I froze. The phone rang loudly, announcing to the store that something was not going according to plan. I tried to stop it. I pressed one button, then another. But instead of stopping, I somehow put it on speaker. The ringing echoed across the checkout area like a dramatic countdown. And then came the voice. My nephew. Cheerful, confused, and very loud. Hello? Uncle? Why are you calling me? Are you at a concert or something? The cashier's eyebrow climbed higher. The person behind me coughed in a way that sounded suspiciously like a laugh. I whispered at the phone. Not now. Wrong time. But the microphone was eager. My nephew's voice boomed. What? Speak up, I can't hear you. I fumbled. I tapped the screen, swiped, pressed, hoped. Instead of ending the call, I managed to open the camera. Now the machine was staring at a blurry picture of my own face, looking horrified. I quickly flipped it back, which only resulted in my nephew seeing the cashier on video. Uncle, he said, who's that? Are you buying chips again? You know you promised to eat healthier. The cashier's polite smile twitched. The person behind me coughed again. This time, definitely a laugh. I felt the weight of the groceries, the milk, the bread, the coffee. So simple, yet so heavy with judgment. All I wanted was to pay with dignity. Instead, I was starring in a public phone call that nobody asked for. I tried again to hang up. This time, I pressed something that turned the volume even louder. My nephew shouted, "Did you fix that squeaky toilet yet? Mom said you were supposed to do it last weekend." The cashier finally broke. A tiny chuckle escaped. The line behind me shifted again, amusement spreading like a ripple through a pond. I muttered apologies, half to the cashier, half to the universe. This will just take a moment. But phones have a sense of humor, because instead of ending the call, I somehow activated voice assistant mode. The phone chirped happily. "How can I help you?" Before I could stop it, my nephew shouted into the speaker, "Order more pickled eggs for Uncle. He's obsessed with them." The phone processed this command with frightening enthusiasm. Ordering pickled eggs. The screen displayed 3 online shops competing for the honor of shipping me jars of brined regret. The cashier gave up on holding a straight face. She laughed openly now, though politely covering her mouth. The man behind me leaned on his cart, grinning. And I wished I had just brought cash. I jabbed at the screen in desperation. The phone resisted. It was like trying to wrestle a very slippery, very stubborn fish. Every button I pressed only made things worse. First, the flashlight turned on. Now my hand was glowing like a lighthouse, illuminating the candy display by the register. Then, the camera popped back open, snapping an unflattering photo of my left eyebrow at close range. Somehow the calculator appeared too, as if the phone was suggesting I solve math problems instead of paying for groceries. The cashier, to her credit, remained professional. She had the calm expression of someone watching a mildly entertaining play. The kind of play where you know the actor has forgotten their lines, but you're curious to see what they'll do next. Behind me, the line had grown. A woman with a basket of vegetables leaned sideways, trying to see the performance more clearly. A man with a stack of soda cans whispered something to his friend, who immediately stifled a laugh. I was, unintentionally, the evening's entertainment. My nephew was still on the line. "Uncle, are you okay? You sound like you're in trouble. Blink twice if you need help," which of course is not very useful advice over the phone. I tried to shush him, but the voice assistant interpreted my hissing noises as a command. "Searching for snakes," it announced helpfully, and up popped a list of nearby reptile exhibits. At this point, I considered abandoning the groceries entirely, just walking out, leaving behind the milk and the bread as though they had never been mine to claim. But my pride resisted. I could not let the machine win. I could not let my nephew think I had been bested by a piece of technology and a loaf of bread. So I took a deep breath. I decided to start over. Step 1, end the call. Step 2, close all the accidental apps. Step 3, focus only on the payment. Simple, direct. This time, I would prevail. I located the red button to end the call. I pressed it firmly. The ringing stopped. The screen went blank. Victory. Or so I thought, because half a second later, the phone buzzed again. A new call. For my nephew. Apparently, he thought I had hung up by mistake, so he was calling back, determined to rescue me from whatever adventure he imagined I was having in the checkout line. "Uncle," he said immediately, "I lost you. Did the cashier kidnap you? Do you need me to call Grandma?" I slammed the button again. This time, blessed silence. No nephew, no voice assistant, no snakes. Just me, the phone, and the judgmental hum of the payment machine. I smiled at the cashier, who was valiantly holding back another laugh. "Sorry," I said. "First time using this feature." She nodded politely, though her eyes were sparkling. "It happens," she replied, which I suspect was a polite lie. Now the pressure was on. I could feel the weight of the line behind me, a row of patient but deeply amused spectators. The groceries were waiting. The machine was waiting. And my phone, freshly cleared of chaos, was finally ready. I opened the wallet app again. The screen lit up with the right symbol. I angled the phone carefully, like a pilot guiding a plane to its final landing. Slowly, gently, with measured precision. And nothing. The machine blinked. The phone buzzed. But the magical beep of success refused to appear. I shifted the phone, higher, lower, sideways. I tried tapping lightly, then harder, then at a diagonal angle, as if that might unlock a hidden doorway to digital payments. Still nothing. The cashier leaned slightly forward. "You might need to unlock it again," she suggested kindly. I glanced down. The screen had timed out. It was dark. I had been waving a sleeping phone at the machine like a person offering a nap to technology. I unlocked it again, trying not to notice the growing smirks in the line behind me. The phone was awake now, glowing with readiness. This had to be it. I held it steady. I tapped. I prayed. And then, at last, a noise. A cheerful digital beep. The machine lit up. Success. The cashier smiled. Approved. I exhaled, relieved. The ordeal was over. I had conquered the machine. I was a phone-paying customer at last. But of course, life wasn't finished with me yet. Because at that exact moment, my phone buzzed again. A text message from my nephew. It read, "Uncle, Grandma, and I are on our way." Hold on. Apparently, in his imagination, I was still being held hostage in aisle 5 by a loaf of bread and a suspicious cashier. I sighed. The cashier laughed outright this time. The line behind me chuckled too. And I, clutching my bag of groceries, walked out of the store with as much dignity as a person can have while explaining to strangers, "He worries too much." The automatic doors slid open as I stepped outside, groceries in hand. The evening air was cool, calm, and peaceful. I had survived the checkout line. I'd battled the phone. I had triumphed eventually. Surely the adventure was over. But then the buzzing came again. My pocket vibrated with urgency. I pulled out the phone. Another message from my nephew. This one read, "We're almost there. Don't panic. We'll rescue you." I froze. We? Who was we? I tapped the screen and saw a group chat. Apparently my nephew had recruited my sister, his mother, into the mission. And worse, Grandma was included too. 3 generations united by one false assumption, that I was in danger at the grocery store. Another text arrived, this time from Grandma. "Hold tight. We know how to handle these situations." I blinked. Situations? What did they think was happening? I was holding a bag of oranges, not being chased by international spies. I considered replying. A calm message, something like, "All is fine. False alarm. Please go home." But before I could type, the phone rang again. This time it was a video call. I hesitated. If I answered, it would only make things worse. But if I didn't, they might think I had been captured. Reluctantly, I swiped to accept. 3 faces appeared on the screen. My nephew, wide-eyed with excitement. My sister, looking suspicious and determined. Grandma, squinting into the camera because she always forgets where the lens is. "Uncle!" my nephew shouted. "Are you okay? Do you need backup?" "I'm fine," I said firmly. "Everything is under control. I bought groceries. That's all." My sister frowned. "Are you sure? You don't sound fine. You sound like someone who's being forced to say they're fine." Grandma leaned closer to the screen. "All we need is a signal. Just say the word pineapple and we'll storm in." I nearly dropped the oranges. "Please don't storm in." "There's nothing to storm. I paid for groceries. That's the whole story." But they weren't convinced, because just then, a car horn blared behind me. I turned, and there they were. My nephew, my sister, and Grandma pulling up to the store in their family car like a rescue squad. The car door flew open. Out bounded my nephew, carrying what looked suspiciously like a toy sword. Behind him, my sister marched with a face of grim determination. And Grandma followed, holding a purse that could double as a medieval weapon if necessary. Shoppers in the parking lot stopped to stare. A man loading watermelons into his trunk paused mid-lift. Two kids pointed and whispered, and I, standing there with my bag of oranges, realized I had no escape. "Uncle!" my nephew shouted again, rushing toward me. "We've got you!" "I don't need to be got," I protested. "I just need to go home." But they were already surrounding me, checking me over, asking rapid-fire questions. "Did the cashier threaten you?" my sister demanded. "No," I said. She was very polite. "Did someone follow you outside?" Grandma asked. "No," I said. "The only thing following me is gravity." "Are you sure?" my nephew asked, waving his toy sword like a knight. "Yes," I said. "I'm completely sure." But they weren't listening. They were scanning the parking lot like detectives on a case. My nephew pointed at a shopping cart. "That looks suspicious." "It's a cart," I said. "It has wheels." That's all. My sister eyed a man carrying a bag of dog food. "Why is he walking so fast?" "Because dog food is heavy," I said. Grandma tapped her chin. "What about that pigeon?" "It's watching us very closely." "It's a pigeon," I said. "It watches everything closely." Shoppers continued to stare. Some were amused, some were bewildered. One woman even clapped softly, as though we were performing street theater. I sighed. This was no longer a quick errand. This was a public spectacle. "Listen," I said carefully. "I called you by accident. That's all. I was trying to pay, and I pressed the wrong button." My sister folded her arms. "So you're saying you didn't need help?" "Correct," I said. "You weren't kidnapped." "Correct." "And you weren't held hostage by a loaf of bread." "Correct," I said, trying not to sound too frustrated. They exchanged glances. Finally, Grandma nodded slowly. "Well," she said, "it's good we came anyway." "You never know," my nephew lowered his toy sword. "Yeah," he said reluctantly. "But next time, if you do need rescuing, you should have a secret code word." "Like pineapple?" I asked dryly. "Exactly," he said, beaming. I shook my head and started toward the car. "Come on, let's go home before the pigeon reports us." We didn't go straight home. Oh no, that would have been far too simple. Instead, my sister declared, we should sit down somewhere and talk this through, as if I had just returned from a dangerous expedition and needed a press conference. So we marched across the street to the little cafe on the corner, the one with tables that wobble slightly, menus that are laminated for mysterious reasons, and a chalkboard that always advertises soup of the day in curly handwriting. I tried to protest. "I really just want to go home. The milk is getting warm." But Grandma was already inside, choosing a booth, and my nephew was already at the counter, ordering 3 hot chocolates and a slice of cake for recovery. Recovery from what? I wondered. Cake, apparently, was essential for surviving a grocery store rescue mission. We all sat down at the booth. The table wobbled exactly as predicted. The hot chocolates arrived, topped with foam so tall it looked like whipped cream had ambitions to join the circus. My sister leaned forward. "Now," she said, "tell us exactly what happened." I sighed. "There's nothing to tell." I tried to pay with my phone. I accidentally called my nephew. That's all. My nephew slurped his hot chocolate noisily. "You sounded like you were being chased." "I was being chased," I said, "by the checkout line." That's all. Grandma stirred her drink thoughtfully. "You need better training. Phones can't be trusted. They always cause trouble unless you know their secrets." I raised an eyebrow. "Secrets?" "Yes," she said gravely. "Your cousin showed me how to make the screen bigger by pinching with 2 fingers. That's a secret. Maybe your phone has secrets too." My nephew perked up. "I can train you, Uncle. I'm good at phones." Watch." He whipped out his device like a magician drawing a sword. It was decorated with a bright green case and at least 3 stickers of superheroes in dramatic poses. "Step 1, he announced. "Always know where the power button is." He pressed it confidently. The screen went black. He pressed it again. The screen stayed black. He frowned. "Okay, maybe it's out of battery." My sister rolled her eyes. Helpful, but he was undeterred. "Step 2, he continued, grabbing my phone from me without warning, "is always keep your apps in order." "Uncle, your screen is a mess. Look at this. Half your apps are hiding." "They're not hiding," I said. "I just don't use them." "That's even worse," he said solemnly. "They could ambush you at any time. Look, you've got something called Cloud Notepad Deluxe. Do you even know what that does?" "No," I admitted, "and I'd like to keep it that way." He gasped as though I'd confessed to never brushing my teeth. "Uncle, knowledge is power. You need to practice." And before I could stop him, he tapped the screen. The cafe suddenly filled with music, loud, triumphant orchestral music. Apparently, Cloud Notepad Deluxe came with its own theme song. Heads turned. A barista dropped a spoon. My nephew grinned proudly. "See? It's alive." I fumbled to turn the volume down. Instead, I somehow switched to the front-facing camera. Now, the entire table was staring at my own confused face, magnified on the screen like a reluctant movie star. "Uncle," my nephew whispered, "this is exactly why you need training." "You're dangerous?" Grandma nodded in agreement. "Phones sense fear," she said sagely. "You must be calm." I groaned. I was calm until you all turned a grocery trip into a rescue mission. But they weren't listening. My sister had grabbed a napkin and was sketching diagrams. "Here," she said, drawing little squares and arrows. "This is your home screen. This is where your payment app should live. You keep it in the corner, right next to messages, so you don't confuse it with calling." She slid the napkin toward me like it was classified intelligence. I nodded dutifully, though the doodle looked more like a potato with legs than a phone interface. Meanwhile, my nephew had returned to demonstrating. "Watch closely," he said. He tapped again. This time, the phone began calling someone. I lunged to stop him. "Who are you calling?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Who's Mr. Delivery Pizza?" The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a cheerful voice answered, "Hello, Pizza Palace. How may I help you?" Every head in the cafe turned again. Some people even chuckled. I grabbed the phone and frantically apologized. "Sorry, wrong number. No pizza required." But my nephew was already waving at the phone. "Wait, actually, can we get a large pepperoni?" I hung up before negotiations could continue. The barista was laughing openly now. Even Grandma was giggling into her whipped cream. I set the phone firmly on the table. No more demonstrations. No more rescues. No more training. I'm going home. But of course, it wasn't that simple. Because the phone buzzed again. And this time, it wasn't my nephew or my sister or Grandma. It was the pizza place calling back. The phone buzzed insistently on the table. The caller ID glowed. Pizza Palace. Everyone froze. Even the cafe music seemed to pause. "Don't answer it," I whispered. "Let it go to voicemail." But my nephew was faster. He swiped the green button with a grin. "Hello, Pizza Palace. Yes, we'd love a large pepperoni." I lunged across the table, nearly spilling whipped cream foam everywhere, and snatched the phone from his hands. "No, no pizza," I said firmly into the receiver. "This is a mistake. Please cancel everything." On the other end, the voice replied cheerfully, "Sir, we don't have an order under your name. Are you sure you don't want to place one?" Behind me, my nephew mouthed the words, "Yes, yes, and gestured frantically like a silent movie star begging for food. I turned away from him. No, absolutely not. Thank you. And I hung up before temptation could strike again. I slid the phone into my pocket and folded my arms. Enough. This training session is officially over. We are not calling anyone else. Not pizza, not pigeons, not the United Nations. Nobody. My sister sighed. You're overreacting. Overreacting? I asked, pointing around the cafe. Half the customers were still watching us like we were a traveling circus troupe. One man even raised his coffee cup to toast me. I just wanted to buy bread, I said flatly. That was my whole plan today. Bread. Grandma patted my hand. Well, you bought bread, and you learned valuable lessons about technology. I learned nothing, I muttered. Except maybe that napkins are not suitable teaching tools and nephews should never be trusted with live phones. But then my sister gave me a look. The same look she used when we were kids and she'd convinced me to trade my shiny marbles for her rare rock collection. It was the look of someone about to declare victory. Fine, she said. We'll stop the training. But at least let's practice the payment app once before you leave. No, I said firmly. Yes, she replied, sliding my phone out of my pocket with a speed that suggested she had done this before. She tapped confidently. There. Ready. Just pretend this hot chocolate is your item. Hold the phone near the register and beep. The cafe's payment machine lit up. The barista blinked. You just paid for another hot chocolate. My sister froze. My nephew gasped. Grandma clapped. And the barista, clearly amused, delivered a second hot chocolate to our table with a flourish. On the house, he said, grinning. Or rather, on your phone. The table erupted with laughter. Even I couldn't help but chuckle, though I buried my face in the foam of my original drink. Apparently, my phone was determined to spend money whether I wanted it to or not. I sighed. Well, I said, at least it didn't call the fire department. Yet, my nephew added helpfully. The three of them sipped their drinks happily, while I sat back defeated. My simple grocery trip had become a rescue mission, a training seminar, and now a beverage sponsorship. Clearly, Act 3 of this day was waiting right around the corner. We left the cafe with all the dignity of circus performers sneaking out of the tent after the lions had escaped. My nephew skipped, my sister sighed, and Grandma hummed something suspiciously like a marching song. I trailed behind, juggling grocery bags, a nearly finished hot chocolate, and the second hot chocolate that no one truly wanted but no one would throw away. The sidewalk stretched long and damp before us. A few puddles caught the weak light of the cloudy afternoon, turning every step into a choice between splashing or sidestepping. My nephew chose splashing. My sister chose sidestepping. Grandma, astonishingly, glided through the puddles as if the water knew better than to touch her shoes. I, meanwhile, was still thinking about bread, how far I had traveled from the simple dream of bread. At that point, the loaf in my bag had achieved mythical status. It was no longer bread. It was the bread, the quest item, the grail. I imagined getting home, placing it reverently on the kitchen counter and slicing it neatly, maybe even toasting a piece, perhaps adding butter. Yes, a humble, buttery slice of toast, a victory feast to mark the end of this long and ridiculous journey. But my nephew, as usual, had other ideas. Uncle, he said, hopping from puddle to puddle like an amphibious superhero. You can't stop now. You need practice. You've got to try again. I nearly dropped both hot chocolates. Practice? After all that? Absolutely not. Never again. The training is canceled. The class dismissed. But he wasn't listening. He twirled his little phone like a baton. Heroes always get back up after they fall, even if they fall into a pond, even if they fall into a volcano, even if they fall into... Yes, I interrupted. But this isn't about volcanoes. This is about me trying to buy a loaf of bread and instead funding a worldwide comedy act. My sister caught up with us, brushing rain from her sleeve. "He has a point," she said. "If you don't try again now, you'll just avoid it forever. You'll become one of those people who only pays with coins, counting them one by one while the line grows behind you." "I like coins," I muttered. "They never call your nephew by accident." Grandma chuckled softly. "Oh, nonsense. Look there." She pointed across the sidewalk. A striped umbrella sheltered a small flower stall. Buckets of roses, tulips, carnations, and daisies brightened the gray day. A cheerful man rearranged stems, whistling to himself. "Perfect practice," Grandma said. "Nothing complicated, nothing dangerous, one flower, $1. What could possibly go wrong?" The three of them turned to me. I felt like a cornered raccoon holding groceries. My nephew grinned so wide I could practically hear his teeth sparkle. My sister raised her eyebrows, daring me to refuse. Grandma folded her hands as though she had already won. Sighed. "Fine. One flower. Then we leave. Then toast." We approached the stall. The flower man greeted us with the kind of friendliness that suggested he had not yet met me or my phone. "Good afternoon. Looking for something special today?" "No," I said quickly. "Just a daisy." One daisy. I pointed at the simplest, most innocent flower in the bucket, the least likely to cause disaster. He nodded happily and began wrapping it in paper. "That'll be $1. I reached for my phone with exaggerated slowness, like someone handling a sleeping dragon. Tap, swipe. The screen glowed. My nephew leaned in. My sister crossed her arms. Grandma whispered, "Be brave." I held the phone near the terminal. Beep. Success. The flower man smiled and handed me the daisy. "There you go. Have a lovely day," I exhaled. "See? Simple, no disasters. Just a daisy." I turned triumphantly toward my family, but my nephew was staring at the screen. His grin spread like syrup on a pancake. Uncle," he said slowly, "you didn't just buy one daisy." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" The flower man hesitated. "Well, according to this, you purchased 300 daisies." He turned the screen toward me. $300. Quantity, 300 daisies. I blinked at the glowing numbers. My mind tried to calculate how much space 300 daisies would occupy. Buckets, wheelbarrows, an entire parade float. My nephew fell onto a bench, wheezing with laughter. My sister pressed her palm to her forehead, as though fighting a headache that had lived in her for centuries. Grandma clapped her hands together, utterly delighted. The flower man, ever professional, tilted his head politely. "Would you like them all wrapped individually or in bulk?" The flower man repeated his question. "Would you like them all wrapped individually or in bulk?" I opened my mouth, but no words came out. 300 daisies, wrapped individually. The image popped into my mind. Me, staggering home with 300 paper cones of flowers like a magician who'd lost control of his tricks. "Cancel it," I said quickly. "Please cancel it. This is a mistake." The flower man tapped the screen with calm professionalism. "Of course, sir. These things happen all the time." "All the time?" my sister asked skeptically. "Do people often accidentally order small gardens?" He smiled faintly. "More often than you'd think. Once, a woman bought 900 roses when she only wanted 9. Her living room became a forest, quite romantic, in a suffocating way. My nephew laughed so hard he nearly dropped his own phone. "Uncle, you'd be a legend at school. Imagine showing up with 300 daisies. They'd probably build a statue of you. The flower knight, defender of petals." I groaned. This is not the kind of legacy I want. Grandma tilted her head. "Think positively. 300 daisies could brighten every corner of your home. Kitchen, bathroom, even the closet." She smiled. "You'd never feel lonely again. Each daisy could be like a little friend." 300 friends is too many," I muttered. "I can barely handle the ones I have." The flower man fiddled with the terminal, squinting. "Just a moment. The system is a bit slow today." I clutched the daisy I'd already received. It looked innocent. Too innocent. As though it were plotting with the others behind my back. My nephew leaned close and whispered, "You could start a side business. Uncle's discount daisy shop, 50 cents a flower. You'd make your money back in no time." My sister rolled her eyes. Knowing him, he'd accidentally sell them to the wrong people, or give them away for free, or trade them for more bread. "I like bread," I said defensively. "It never multiplies itself by 300 without permission." The flower man frowned at his screen. "There we go. Cancelled. Mostly." "Mostly?" I repeated. "Yes," he said cheerfully. "The transaction is reversed here. But sometimes the bank takes a little while to catch up. You may still get a temporary confirmation." As if on cue, my phone buzzed. I looked down. Notification: "Thank you for your large order of 300 daisies. Delivery scheduled for tomorrow morning." I stared at the glowing text. No words, just despair. My nephew howled with laughter, rolling on the bench now like a stranded turtle. Grandma clapped her hands again, as if we had reached the finale of a fireworks show. My sister pinched the bridge of her nose so tightly I worried it might never recover. I turned to the flower man. "Delivery?" I didn't even give an address. He shrugged apologetically. "Phones can be clever. Sometimes they pull addresses from accounts automatically." "Clever?" I hissed. "This is not clever. This is a floral invasion." My nephew pretended to narrate like a news reporter. "Tomorrow morning, local man buried under 300 daisies. Rescue workers baffled. Bread goes uneaten." Grandma nodded seriously. "They'll probably need shovels." "Stop helping," I muttered. We began walking back toward the car again, the daisy cradled in my hand like evidence in a crime. But the conversation refused to die. My sister listed practical problems. "Where will you put them? Do you own 300 vases? Do you have 300 glasses even? The sink isn't big enough. The tub isn't big enough. The neighbors will talk." My nephew listed imaginative possibilities. "You could build a fort, a daisy fort, or make daisy armor. You'd look like a knight, but softer. People would fear your pollen." Grandma listed potential blessings. "Perhaps the delivery will arrive just as a neighbor has a birthday. You'll be remembered as generous. Or maybe a wedding will appear suddenly, and you'll be ready." I listed only one thing. My patience is gone. When we reached the car, I tossed the grocery bags into the trunk with exaggerated care, as if to remind them that at least they had not betrayed me. I tucked the daisy beside the bread, hoping the loaf might absorb its chaotic energy. But as I sat down in the driver's seat, my phone buzzed again. This time, another notification. "Tracking update. Your daisy order is being prepared for shipment. Estimated arrival, 9 a.m. My nephew cackled. "You're doomed." I leaned my forehead against the steering wheel. The horn honked. A pigeon flew away in alarm. Somewhere in the distance, I was sure. The other 299 daisies were laughing. The next morning began with an unusual silence. For once, no alarms, no phone buzzes, just the quiet hum of a house that seemed to be saying, "Don't get up yet. You'll regret it." I stumbled into the kitchen. The bread sat on the counter, patient and noble. I nodded at it. "Good morning, bread. At least you've stayed true." But the daisy, the single daisy I had brought home, leaned in a cup of water beside it, and I swear it looked taller, stronger, as if preparing for the arrival of its army. My nephew bounded into the room with the energy of someone who had eaten breakfast and dessert already. "Uncle!" "It's almost 9. I froze. "Almost 9? He grinned. "Daisy o'clock." Right on cue, a distant rumble shook the window panes. Not thunder, not construction. A low, mechanical growl rolling closer, like a beast with wheels. I stepped to the window, and there it was. A delivery truck. Bright green, painted with flowers across its side. The words "Petals Express" shimmered in bold lettering. It turned the corner with majestic inevitability, as if guided not by GPS but by fate itself. Neighbors peeked out of doors and windows. Dogs barked. A child pointed and shouted, "Look, Mom, the flower parade is here." The truck slowed, stopped directly in front of my house. The brakes hissed. The back door rolled open with theatrical slowness. Inside, buckets upon buckets of daisies gleamed. A rolling ocean of white petals and golden centers. A sea ready to spill. The driver hopped out, clipboard in hand. "Delivery for," he squinted, "Mr. Daisy?" My nephew fell to the floor, laughing. My sister appeared at the door, coffee mug in hand, her face caught between amusement and disbelief. Grandma adjusted her glasses, leaned on her cane, and said serenely, "Well, they're here." The driver walked up to me. 300 daisies. Where would you like them?" I stammered. "There's been a mistake. I didn't mean to order them." He checked his clipboard. "Paid in full. Address confirmed. Special instructions, deliver with cheer." "Special instructions?" Croaked. "I didn't write that." My nephew grinned. "Maybe the app knows your personality better than you do." Grandma clapped her hands together. "Let's put them in the yard. Think of the curb appeal." My sister sighed. "At least they're biodegradable." The driver tilted his head. "So, front yard, backyard, or all over?" "All over?" I repeated, horrified. But before I could protest further, 2 assistants jumped out of the truck. They began unloading bucket after bucket of daisies, forming neat rows on the sidewalk. The air filled with the faint, sweet scent of petals. Neighbors gathered, murmuring with curiosity. "Is it a party?" one asked. "Is it an art project?" another wondered. Someone whispered, "I think it's a wedding surprise." My nephew cupped his hands like a megaphone. "It's for my uncle. He bought them with his phone, on purpose." A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. Phones lifted. Pictures were taken. Somewhere, a video surely began trending with the caption, "Man accidentally marries daisies." Buckets filled the driveway. Buckets filled the porch. Buckets lined the sidewalk like guards awaiting command. I raised my arms helplessly. "This isn't me. This is technology. The machines have taken over." But no one believed me. Grandma picked up a daisy and tucked it into her hair. "Lovely," she said simply. My sister pulled one out of a bucket and handed it to me. "Here, Flower Night. Might as well wear your crown." The driver handed me the clipboard. "Sign here, please." I scrawled something that looked more like a confession than a signature. The driver tipped his cap. "Enjoy your daisies, Mr. Daisy. Have a blooming good day." The truck rumbled away, leaving me standing in a sea of petals, my family smiling far too much, my neighbors gossiping, and my phone buzzing again in my pocket. Another notification. Would you like to reorder this purchase weekly? The daisies multiplied in every direction. Buckets stretched across the driveway, the porch, the yard, even the neighbor's fence line. It looked less like a house and more like the headquarters of a flower cult. I stood frozen in the middle of it, hands on my head, muttering, "This is not sustainable." My nephew, however, saw opportunity. He plucked a handful of daisies, tucked them under his arm, and announced, "I'll handle this, Uncle. We're going into business." Before I could stop him, he dragged an old card table out of the garage. On top, he placed a lopsided cardboard sign he had scribbled in marker. "Daisies for sale, $1 each, Uncle's fault." I groaned. "Why does my name have to be on the sign?" "Brand recognition," he explained seriously. "People trust a story. And the story is, you can't buy bread, but you can buy 300 daisies. That's hilarious. People will pay for the joke." Within minutes, neighbors were wandering over, some out of curiosity, some out of pity, all of them holding small coins and smiling far too much. "Are they fresh?" one asked. "As fresh as my uncle's bad decisions," my nephew replied proudly. The crowd laughed. More people lined up. It became less of a flower sale and more of a street festival. Someone brought lemonade, someone else brought folding chairs. A dog wore a daisy crown. Grandma joined in, plucking petals to hand out individually like confetti. My sister leaned against the porch railing, sipping her coffee and smirking as though this entire scene had been orchestrated for her personal entertainment. Meanwhile, my nephew raked in cash. "Business is booming, Uncle," he shouted over the chatter. "We've sold 12 daisies already. That's $12. At this rate, we'll be millionaires." 12 daisies out of 300 still leaves 288, I muttered. "At this rate, we'll be here until the next century." But the momentum only grew. Cars slowed down as drivers noticed the stand. One woman pulled over, bought 5 daisies, and left giggling. Another man purchased 10, muttering, "Anniversary tonight. You just saved me." The line stretched down the sidewalk. Children begged their parents for Uncle's fault flowers. Teenagers took selfies with the buckets, tagging me loudly in their captions. I stood there, utterly defeated, while my nephew danced around shouting, "Daisies for everyone! Spread the petals, spread the joy." The bread, still sitting safely in the kitchen, became a symbol of everything I had lost. Finally, the driver of the delivery truck returned, apparently curious. He leaned out of his window and called, "Looks like you're making good use of them." "Take them back," I begged, but he only laughed and drove away again. By noon, half the daisies were gone. The stand had earned nearly $100. My nephew sat at the card table like a victorious tycoon, fanning himself with bills. "Uncle, I've decided," he announced. "We're rebranding. From now on, this isn't your house. It's Daisy HQ." I buried my face in my hands. How did buying bread turn into running a floral empire? Grandma patted my shoulder gently. "Life works in mysterious ways." And from the porch, my sister added, "Also very stupid ways. By late afternoon, the yard looked like a battlefield. Empty buckets rolled on their sides. Petals drifted in the breeze like confetti after a parade. My nephew sat triumphantly at his little card table, the cash neatly stacked in front of him. Grandma napped in a lawn chair, still clutching a daisy in her hand. My sister scrolled her phone, smirking in that way that told me she was definitely saving this for future blackmail. I thought it was finally over, that somehow, by sheer persistence, we had survived the storm of daisies. But then the cars started pulling up. Not neighbors, not relatives, strangers. They parked along the street, climbed out, and walked up to the stand with expectant smiles. "Excuse me," one woman asked. "Is this the place?" The Uncle's Daisy disaster? My nephew's grin widened. Yes, welcome to Daisy HQ. $2 a stem, 3 for 5. How did you even hear about this? I demanded. The woman held up her phone. On the screen was a video. Our house, our yard, our daisies, my nephew shouting Uncle's fault flowers. And below it, thousands of likes, tens of thousands of shares, comments pouring in like water from a broken pipe. Uncle's Daisy debacle. Floral fail. Petal man. It had gone viral. More cars arrived, teenagers, families. A man in a business suit. One couple posed for a romantic photo with a bucket of daisies. A child asked if Uncle Daisy would sign their flower. Uncle Daisy. That was me now. I raised my arms in protest. I'm not Uncle Daisy. I just wanted bread. But it was too late. The legend had overtaken the truth. My nephew was in his element, tossing daisies like souvenirs at a sports game. Step right up. Get your official Uncle Daisy flowers, as seen online. Neighbors leaned on fences, laughing. Grandma woke up, blinked at the growing crowd, and said calmly, "Well, this seems festive." By evening, the front lawn resembled a fairground. Music played from someone's speaker. Kids made daisy chains. Someone even set up a small grill and started handing out hot dogs. I sat on the porch, daisy crown forced onto my head by my nephew, staring at the spectacle with hollow eyes. This is my legacy now, I muttered. Not the man who bought bread. The man who bought daisies. Finally, as the sun sank and the last car pulled away, silence returned. The buckets were empty. The cash box was full. The yard was littered with petals, glowing faintly in the twilight. My nephew counted the money out loud, every dollar punctuated with glee. Grandma sipped tea and hummed. My sister leaned beside me and whispered, "You realize this will never die, right? Family gatherings, birthdays, weddings, you will always be Uncle Daisy." I sighed. The bread still sat in the kitchen, untouched. The original noble quest, forgotten. Later that night, when everyone had gone to bed, I finally sliced the bread. One plain piece of toast. No daisies, no disasters, no audience. Just bread. I chewed slowly, in the quiet of the kitchen. For the first time all day, I felt at peace. Until my phone buzzed. Notification. Because you enjoyed daisies, would you like to subscribe to our Tulip Club? I turned the phone face down. I finished my toast. And I went to bed, hoping that tomorrow would bring nothing more exciting than breakfast. The first wave of strangers was only the beginning. By sunset, the street was clogged with cars. A drone buzzed overhead, filming the yard like it was a breaking news event. Neighbors tried to water their lawns, but the hoses sprayed right into clusters of curious onlookers who were too busy snapping selfies with daisies to care. My nephew had set up 2 more card tables by now. One for the flowers, one for official Uncle Daisy merchandise, which turned out to be scraps of printer paper with doodles of me holding a daisy, sold for $0.25 apiece. A third table was reserved for his finance team, which was really just him in a baseball cap turned backward, counting dollar bills with both hands and nodding like a Wall Street mogul. The line stretched past the corner. Someone brought a megaphone to announce daisy specials. A group of teenagers organized a chant, "Uncle Daisy! Uncle Dicey!" I buried my face in my hands. This wasn't a flower sale anymore. It was a movement. Grandma, somehow, had been crowned queen of the festival. People lined up just to watch her pluck petals slowly while saying, "He loves me. He loves me not." The crowd oohed and awed after every knot, as if it were a plot twist in a soap opera. My sister had opened a lemonade stand next to my nephew's tables, but instead of charging money, she charged one embarrassing fact about Uncle. Business was booming. Somebody set up a ring toss with empty daisy buckets. Somebody else strummed a guitar and sang improvised ballads about my poor life choices. The dog down the street trotted proudly by, tail wagging, wearing a full daisy tutu. A local news van pulled up. The reporter, hair perfect, makeup glowing, shoved a microphone in my face. "Sir, can you tell us how this all began?" I stared into the camera lens, dead-eyed, crown of daisies tilting to one side. "I just wanted bread." The crowd erupted in cheers as though I had delivered the punchline to the greatest joke in history. My nephew leapt onto a table and held up a daisy like the Statue of Liberty with her torch. "Uncle Daisy forever," he cried. The chant resumed. "Uncle Daisy, Uncle Daisy." Clapping, stomping. A bass drum appeared from nowhere. I tried to retreat into the house, but a group of enthusiastic teens blocked the way, begging me to autograph their flower petals. "Please sign it, Uncle Daisy. You're trending worldwide, worldwide." I checked my phone. The hashtags were everywhere. "Money our Uncle Daisy. Your petal power. Blooming legend." Celebrities had reposted the video. Talk show hosts were making jokes. One post claimed I was starting a green lifestyle revolution. Another said I was the accidental face of sustainable joy. Meanwhile, my nephew had added daisy bouquets to the menu at $20 a bunch. They sold out instantly. A man tried to haggle, and my nephew refused, saying, "These aren't just flowers. These are history." The streetlights flickered on. Still, the festival raged. Someone projected a giant daisy onto the side of the house. Someone else printed t-shirts overnight. My face with wide eyes underlined by the words bread, number, daisies. I slumped in a lawn chair, surrounded by confetti petals, the daisy crown sliding down over my eyes. The cheering swelled. The music grew louder. The smell of fried food and fresh flowers mingled in the night air. And above it all, my nephew's voice echoed triumphantly through the megaphone. "Step right up, everybody. Uncle Daisy delivers joy, one petal at a time." The crowd roared. The chant thundered. The daisies ruled. I had lost complete control. Bread was a forgotten dream. There was only the viral chaos. The chanting was deafening now. "Uncle Daisy, Uncle Daisy." A marching band thundered down the street, drums rattling the windows. The crowd surged. Merchandise sold faster than my nephew could scribble doodles. And then she appeared. Not a celebrity, not a random stranger, but my neighbor, my old crush from my 30s, the one I used to wave at nervously while mowing the lawn, the one I once rehearsed small talk for, only to trip over the word hello. She strolled up the driveway, holding a daisy bouquet like she had just plucked it from the middle of the madness. Her smile hadn't changed, still that same easy grin that used to make me forget what I was carrying. Once it was groceries, another time it was an entire ladder. The crowd parted as she approached, phones recording, whispers buzzing. It was like every spotlight in the city had turned my driveway into a stage. "Uncle Daisy," she said softly. I blinked. You know about that?" She laughed. "Everyone knows about that. You're trending worldwide. But I figured I'd stop by before the mayor declares a national holiday." The crowd chuckled. Even my nephew paused mid-sail to grin knowingly. I shifted my daisy crown nervously. "Well, hi. Long time no see, long time," she agreed, brushing a petal from her shoulder. And I have to say, this is the funniest way I've ever reconnected with an old neighbor. Before I could reply, the crowd erupted again, chanting louder, clapping in rhythm, treating our awkward reunion like the grand finale of a romantic comedy. Someone started playing a violin. Where did they even get a violin? My nephew, of course, couldn't resist. Into the megaphone, he shouted, "Ladies and gentlemen, Uncle Daisy and his long-lost neighbor reunited at last. The bouquet is now $30 with a bonus love story included." The line doubled instantly. Cash flew into jars. Petals rained like confetti. I leaned closer, trying to escape the noise just enough to say, "This is not usually my kind of Saturday." She grinned. "Maybe not, but I have to admit, you look good in a daisy crown." And just like that, the chanting hit a new peak. Uncle Daisy, Uncle Daisy. The drums boomed, the crowd howled, and petals filled the sky. It wasn't just viral chaos anymore. It was viral chaos with the tiniest spark of possibility.